All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl, broadcasting to you from beautiful Indiana. And I'm here with my good friends Dan and Catherine and Lori and Kenneth, and Jason will probably be on here in a minute as well. We're talking about the book The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and we are on page 253 at the part titled An Incident with the Police. But before we get going with that, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we can get this discussion going with Catherine reading for us. All right, guys, jump on out.
Lori Emmons in Denver. And I had nothing to do with that incident with the police.
And Sisek in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I too did not have anything that had to do with the incident for the shooter that we had here. We have Kenneth Pettingill here with us also again this week, a friend of Catherine. So we're glad that he's here with us, and welcome to him.
Jason, you're just in time to introduce yourself, honey. You're muted.
I think his stuff's still catching up.
Okay, is that better? I'm adjusting my audio. Can you hear me all right?
Now we can.
Yes.
Happy Saturday, everybody. Thank you so much. I appreciate you waiting on me. Computer wouldn't connect this morning, so thank you. So glad to be here.
Funny how
Awesome.
computers are kind of like kids sometimes. They just don't want to do what you want them to do.
This is true. All right, I'm Catherine Clement, and I'm the reader, so I'm going to start here. An incident with the police. She stepped back out onto Shakespeare Road with her bag and her chest set, and she really didn't know what to do. There were tingles through her body. Not quite pins and needles, more that strange, fuzzy static feeling she had felt before when she was nearing the end of a particular experience or existence. Trying to ignore the feeling, oops, wait a minute. What just happened? There we go. Trying to ignore the feeling in her body, she headed in the vague direction of the car park. She passed her old garden flat at 33A Bancroft Avenue. A man she had never seen before was taking a box of recycling out. She thought of the lovely house in Cambridge she now had and couldn't help but compare it to this shabby flat on a litter-strewn street. The tingle subsided a little. She passed Mr. Bangerjee's house, or what had been Mr. Bangerjee's house, and saw the only owned house on the street that hadn't been divided into flats, though now it looked very different. The small front lawn was overgrown, and there was no sign of the clematis or busy lizzies in pots that Nora had watered for him last summer when he'd been recovering from his hip surgery. On the pavement, she noticed a couple of crumbled Lager cans. She saw a woman with a blonde bob and tan skin walking towards her on the pavement with two small children in a double pushchair. She looked exhausted. It was the woman she had spoken to in the newsagents the day she had decided to die, the one who had seemed happy and relaxed. Carrie Ann. She hadn't noticed Nora because one child was wailing and she was trying to pacify the distressed red-cheeked boy by waving a plastic dinosaur in front of him. Me and Jake were like rabbits, but we got there. Two little terrors, but worth it, you know? I just feel complete. I could show you some pictures. Then Carrie Ann looked up and saw Nora. I know you, don't I? Is it Nora? Yes. Hi, Nora. Hi, Carrie Ann. You remember my name? Oh, wow. I was in awe of you in school. You seem to have it all. Did you ever make the Olympics? Yes, actually, kind of. One me did, but it wasn't what I wanted to be. But then what is, right? Carrie Ann seemed momentarily confused, and then her son threw the dinosaur onto the pavement. Wait a minute. And it landed next to one of the crumpled cans. Right. Nora picked up the dinosaur, the Stegosaurus, on close inspection and handed it to Carrie Ann, who smiled her gratitude and headed into the house that should have belonged to Mr. Banerjee just as the boy descended into a full tantrum. Bye, said Nora. Yeah, bye. And Nora wondered what the difference had been. What had forced Mr. Banerjee to go to the care home he'd been determined not to go to? She was the only difference between the two Mr. Banerjees, but what was that difference? What had she done? Set up an online shop? Picked up his prescription a few times? Never underestimate the big importance of small things, Mrs. Elm had said. You must always remember that. She stared at her own window. She thought of herself in her root life, hovering between life and death in her bedroom, equidistant as it were. And for the first time, Nora worried about herself as if she was actually someone else, not just another version of her, but a different actual person, as though finally, through all the experiences of life she now had, she had become someone who pitied her former self. Not in self-pity, because she was a different self now. Then someone appeared at her own window, a woman who wasn't her, holding a cat that wasn't Voltaire. This was her hope, anyway, even as she began to feel faint and fuzzy again. She headed into town, walked down the high street. Yes, she was different now. She was stronger. She had untapped things inside her, things she might never have known about if she'd never sung in an arena, or fought off a polar bear, or felt so much love and fear and courage. There was a commotion outside Boots. Two boys were being arrested by police officers as a nearby store detective spoke into a walkie-talkie. She recognized one of the boys and went up to him. Leo? A police officer motioned for her to back away. Who are you? Leo asked. Nora realized she couldn't say your piano teacher, and she realized how mad it was, given the fraught extent, to say what she was about to say, but still she said it. Do you have music lessons? Leo looked down as the handcuffs were put on him. I ain't done no music lessons. His voice had lost its bravado. The police officer was frustrated now. Please, miss, leave this to us. He's a good kid, Nora told him. Please don't be too hard on him. Well, this good kid just stole 200 quid's worth from here and has also just been found to be in possession of a concealed weapon. Weapon? A knife. No, there must be some mix-up. He's not that sort of kid. Hear that, the police officer said to his colleague. Lady here thinks our friend Leo Thompson isn't the kind of kid to get into trouble. The other police officer laughed. He's always in and out of bother, this one. Now, please, the first police officer said, let us do our jobs here. Of course, said Nora, of course. Do everything they say, Leo. He looked at her as if she'd been sent as a practical joke. A few years ago, his mum, Doreen, had come into string theory to buy her son a cheap keyboard. She'd been worried about his behavior at school, and he'd expressed an interest in music, so she wanted to get him piano lessons. Nora explained she had an electric piano and could play, but had no formal teacher training. Doreen had explained she didn't have much money, but they struck a deal, and Nora had enjoyed her Tuesday evenings teaching Leo the difference between major and minor seventh chords, and thought he was a great boy, eager to learn. Doreen had seen Leo was getting caught up in the wrong set, but when he got into music, he started doing well in other things, and suddenly he wasn't getting into trouble with teachers anymore, and he'd play everything from Chopin through Scott Joplin to Frank Ocean and John Legend and Rex Orange County with the same care and commitment. Something Mrs. Elm said on an early visit to the Midnight Library came to her. Every life contains many millions of decisions, some big, some small, but every time one decision is taken over another, the outcomes differ. An irreversible variation occurs, which in turn leads to further variations. In this lifetime, right now, the one where she had studied a master's at Cambridge and married Ash and had a baby, she hadn't been in string theory on the day 4 years ago when Doreen and Leo came by. In this timeline, Doreen never found a music teacher who was cheap enough, and so Leo never persisted with music for long enough to realize he had talent. He never sat there side by side with Nora on a Tuesday evening pursuing a passion that he extended at home, producing his own tunes. Nora felt herself weaken, not just tingles and fuzziness, but something stronger, a sense of plunging into nothingness, accompanied by a brief darkening of her vision. A feeling of another Nora right there in the wings, ready to pick up where this one left off. Her brain ready to fill in the gaps and have a perfectly legitimate reason to be on a day trip to Bedford and to fill in every absence as if she were here the whole time. Worried she knew what it meant, she turned away from Leo and his friend as they were escorted away to the police car, the eyes of the whole of Bedford High Street upon them, and she started to quicken her pace towards the car park. This is a good life. This is a good life. This is a good life. You want me to continue? Yeah. A new way of seeing. Let me clear my throat just. She got closer to the station, passing the garish red and yellow zigzags of La Catino, like a Mexican migraine, with a waiter inside taking chairs off tables. And String Theory, too, closed, with a handwritten notice on the door. Alas, String Theory is no longer able to trade in these premises. Due to an increase in rent, we simply couldn't afford to go on. Thanks to all of our loyal customers. Don't think twice. It's all right. You can go your own way. God only knows what will be without you. It was the exact same note she had seen with Dylan. Judging by the date, written in small felt tip letters from Neil's hand, it was from nearly 3 months ago. She felt sad because string theory had meant a lot to people. Yet Nora hadn't been working at string theory when it got into trouble. Well, I suppose I did sell a lot of electric pianos and some rather nice guitars, too. Growing up, she and Joe had always joked about their hometown the way teenagers do, and used to say that HMP Bedford was the inner prison and the rest of the town was just the outer prison. And any chance you had to escape, you should take it. But the sun was out now, and she neared the station, and it seemed that she had been looking at the place wrong all these years. As she passed the statue of prison reformer John Howard in St. Paul's Square, with the trees all around and the river just behind, refracting light, she marveled at it as if she were seeing it for the first time. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. Driving back to Cambridge, cocooned in her expensive Audi, smelling almost nauseatingly of vinyl and plastic and other synthetic materials, weaving through busy traffic, the cars sliding by like forgotten lives, she was deeply wishing she had been able to see Mrs. Elm, the real one, before she had died. It would have been good to have one last game of chess with her before she passed away. And she thought of poor Leo, sat in a small windowless cell at a Bedford police station, waiting for Doreen to come and collect him. This is the best life, she told herself, a little desperately now. This is the best life. I'm staying here. This is the life for me. This is the best life. This is the best life. But she knew she didn't have long.
Wow.
Shall we
I feel
stop?
like she's feeling guilty about having this best life.
I know.
It's kind of
Almost
frustrating.
like the what was that book we read about the upper limit thing? That's
Oh
what it
yeah.
Oh
brought
yeah.
to my mind.
What is that one called? I can't remember, but yeah. Yeah,
It wasn't very long ago either.
I know it was like one of the last books that we read, but yeah, it's frustrating to me because I feel like in her core life, she felt like she had let down everyone, and that's why she was upset in her life. And here she is now enjoying this life and feeling really great about it, but then also feeling guilty because other people that that she may have affected in her core life are having bad situations in this life. And I feel for her because I keep thinking to myself that she needs to find her own path for her own self, and not be so concerned about how everything she does or doesn't do affects everyone else, like she's letting them down. I mean, I hate for her to fall out of this great life just because she's upset that that she somehow wasn't there for Mrs. Elm, and then the other gentleman, Mr. What was his name?
Energy.
Mr. Energy.
Banerjee.
Banerjee, and then now Leo, and it's like, man, I don't know. I feel for her. She just can't go on her own path for her own self without feeling guilty about someone else and how someone else's life did or didn't go the way she thought that it probably should have.
I think it's interesting how this all kind of started once she realized that the original, or as she thinks, the original Mrs. Elm died. And so that started, I think that started her starting to question a little bit of things, even if it wasn't on the forefront of her, but way back there. And then as things kind of progressed along, and she started, as she said, looking at, not just seeing things, or not just looking, but actually seeing things and putting it more into perspective, that she's now looking at the other side of things, I think, which is like what we all do in our own lives, where we'll think of something or think of doing something or want to do something, but then we'll think, well, if I do this, it could have this effect on, let's say, mom or dad, or, family, or best friends or good friends, or, or that teacher that you start looking at those things. And I'm even talking from a like kind of personal experience with myself, where I wanted to do one thing, but then based on other things, I went a whole different trajectory, and now 35 years later, I'm wondering, well, I have looked back at times and wondered, well, I know my life would have been different, way different, but what would it have been like? And, would it have been as good as what I feel I've lived now, even with all the ups and downs of what I've gone through? But, those little things creep in, and you start to really, especially as you get older. I don't know about you guys, but for me, especially as I've gotten older, I do a lot of that now, because it's like, you know, is what I've got and where I'm at, what is this really the best it could be? Or could I have done better? Or could I may have affected somebody's life differently or done more, it's so I don't think there's any really truly per se right answer. It's just what, going back to what Samantha said, I think it's what is best for you, and doing the best you can for yourself, and hopefully have it play out the way it's supposed to, and understand it is going to affect others' lives, and it may affect them adversely, or it may affect them positively too. I don't think there's any one real answer per se.
This whole idea of how it's supposed to be is really something that causes a lot of confusion and questioning. Am I really where I'm supposed to be? And I think we all are exactly where we're supposed to be. because we are all part of the big plan, if there is such a thing.
But how do you teach yourself to maybe not, how do you teach yourself to change your, well, I guess it goes back to some of the books, change your thoughts, change your, you know, life, living the wisdom of the Tao. How we think or how we look at things helps us proceed forward. So in that sense, but but how do we help ourselves to not do that as much, but at the same point still push forward? Because I think we all need dreams or this or what we feel is that purpose of where we're headed. I think that's something that's innate in all of us, and we need that, and we chase after that. But how do we, it's just such a huge, weird, convoluted thing. Maybe there is no real answer.
That's what I've been thinking, that the universe is constantly expanding, and the more possibilities it could be, because it's hard to know, because there's so many things that affect it. You can't figure it out for everybody and everything everywhere, and to not have regrets and constantly wishing for something to be different than it is. So it's only the now, right now, what I have, the presence. This is where I am, and I know all the things that got me here. And it's constantly a question and second guessing and assuming and presuming, and I don't know. I don't have the answer either.
I found it very interesting that with all the scenes that we've gone through and all the past life paths that are in the book, that when it comes back to the string theory um, business, and she mentions that note, it sort of sums it all up, and it sort of connects it as well in regards to the name of the music store being string theory, as in string theory is the idea that, say, in summary, that instead of everything being made up of atoms, it's made up of even smaller things that are strings that vibrate, and that all the strings interact and affect one another. And in that way, the string theory, because all these strings make up everything in the universe, that string theory is also the theory of everything, you say, and that those vibrations all the affect every other string. And so it's kind of illuminating in that the note that is written sort of tells you that you can't plan that. You can't plan how your decisions are going to affect everything else. You can't, not you can't plan it perfectly anyway, and so it kind of leads back to our own kind of like, it's a little bit, you in one way it's kind of makes you a little anxious, but another way it's very freeing, that hey, it's sort of out of your hands, and that you just make the best decisions for yourself. And then leading into what you're saying, Dan, it's like, how do you how do you overcome the things that were sort of holding you back or dictating your decisions, guiding you, the things that were guiding your decisions in the past that maybe you found out you weren't, had some, or that you had some regrets or weren't so happy with. How do you overcome those? And that's sort of like reaching the speed of light, where the faster you go, everything sort of becomes solid and they can't punch through. And so I just think of it as that it's also intermingled. Yet we each do have the ability to, we're all like tuning forks where we take on this energy, but we also can create energy out of it. We can create those vibrations. We can change those vibrations. We're instruments, so to speak, and it takes some focus. It takes focus and understanding that what's guiding our hearts, what's guiding our actions, and to be able to push past that point of resistance, wherever it might be. It might be that we grew up thinking one thing, and we have to push past that thought to allow for better and greater things, whatever it might be. But maybe it can help that, knowing that we're not responsible for how all the other strings in the universe react, as much as we'd like to make things all work out for everyone a certain way. That these things are to play out the best they can, and that everyone else is also their own instrument and can make those decisions and change those energies themselves.
I like what you're saying, but at the same point, we also tend to, if we're honest, I think we all tend to let other people tuning their lives for however, but then some of those lives are, how do I say it? They're in, try not to put it in a way, but I think you guys, some lives are not the best lives. I'll say it that way. And they affect other, I guess I'll say it this way. They're the negative aspects of a lot of what's out there compared to a lot of the positive aspects. And a lot of us, I think, are in that middle. We're negative, positive. It just depends on where we're at in our moments. But yeah, we do let a lot of what's going on out there really affect us. And we play so much because, well, like, oh, I'll disappoint my mother or father, or or even we'll disappoint ourselves. And yet, if we're still playing in this area where, like you were saying, everything's a string and everything's, but yet we're encapsulated in these bodies, and so therefore we still react and we still deal with these things. I don't think it's fully quite so haphazard. I think, within us, we're the ones guiding it, but yet it's, it's hard to always, know which way or what's the best, or even for our own selves, we're kind of flying blind, so to speak, I guess, and, just doing the best. But it's just interesting, how, because we are energy and we all do feel that difference in energy depending on the people around, and it can either lift us up or it can zap us. I have one friend that zaps me, drains me, and and I feel it and I know it, and then I tend to get into that negative state. But so it's how do you but I know I can't control everything either. That's the part that, going back to what you were saying, I know that I can't control everything, and I can't make everything exactly the way I want it, because there are interactions from other people and other things in the world. So but sometimes it's just frustrating because I'm really wanting to go this way, but a lot of times, things happen and I tend to veer off and I'm going that way. It's sometimes it's frustrating and draining.
It's hard to quantify everything and label it all and say it's this or it's that when it's something totally different to another person. And deciding what is right and wrong, good and bad, it all has a polarity. And you drop a pebble in the pond and it's going to make ripples and affects all the other ripples in the pond.
Do you guys think that Nora's finally starting to realize some of this within this life?
It must be. She was really trying to convince herself that this is the best life. And I think that's the only way to get through this is to accept what is and change what you can to the best of your ability and your know-how, your beliefs. Now she repeated to herself, this is the best life.
But the very last sentence there in the very last part of that last chapter that Catherine read, but it says, but she knew she didn't have long. So does that mean that she's feeling she's gonna go to another life, or is she gonna go back to her root life? I get the feeling that she's may go to another life, but to me it seems like she's lived quite a number of lives, and but is that another part? Is that another idea for us as we live our lives? We tend to go through, maybe it's an analogy for even our lives, because we go through periods, even within our own lives, along with the long stretches of the longer, bigger stretches. I'm wondering if that's maybe what she's starting to realize and understand.
Well, I think it's kind of like what you're saying, Dan, before, that you try to go one way and you think, but you think it's going to take you another way, and it's kind of like that belief that maybe that she's that an underlying belief, a subconscious belief like that is maybe what she's going through at this point. She wants to be in that life, but her past has told her that things don't work out for her, or that somehow it's not going to be right. And maybe that's what's kind of tugging at her and pulling her away.
Yeah, I think she's still stuck in this idea that she doesn't deserve to have the happy life, or that, she's not good enough, or whatever, and from everything you guys have talked about just in the last few minutes, I'm just sitting here thinking to myself that, we could make ourselves crazy thinking about, whether or not every little decision that we make in our lives is going to affect somebody in some way, because I mean obviously it's going to, I mean everything that everything that we do affects somebody in some way. But if we spend our whole lives thinking about how everything we do is going to affect somebody else, and should or shouldn't do it because of that, then we're missing out on it, just experiencing our own lives in general. And I think that, I mean, sure, we have to some extent consider the other people in our lives, but like I said, I mean, we would make ourselves crazy if all we did was focus on what we think everyone else is going to experience or like or dislike or whatever. I mean, we have to kind of take responsibility for our own inner world, because our inner world is what helps us to experience the outer world. And just like this one statement here, it says not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. And what you see is determined upon what you're thinking and feeling on the inside. Because I mean, if you're feeling depressed, like, this past couple of weeks, for me being sick and everything else, and I've just felt so low and energy and mentally and everything I'm looking at, I'm just like, what's the point, and and it's hard, but I also know that, when I'm feeling better, and the sun is shining, the birds are singing, I'm like, la la la, everything's happy, so it doesn't even really matter. It just matters what we're I don't know, focused on in our inner world, and because I know when I'm focused on all this, things that stress me out, the bills and and the company and everything that's bothering me, is that then I feel crappy and everything I look at looks crappy. But when I'm focused on more positive things, or focused on the things that if I'm just feeling better in general, it doesn't even matter what's going on, then I'm feeling happy, and it's just mind boggling to think of it in that way, is that it literally is just whatever thoughts are in your head is what you're going to feel, and what you're going to experience. And and in some ways I feel like that's a positive, because we can control those thoughts if we want to. We just have to take control of the reins. And then, but the other aspect of that, when we're looking at everyone else, is we have to recognize everyone else is doing the same thing. They're having the roller coaster in their own mind of, positive versus negative. And we have absolutely no control over that. No matter what we do or don't do, is not going to necessarily make a person feel any certain way that we think they should feel. That's where it kind of comes in. I mean, we could think that if we take this one action that's going to affect another person, and we can think that they're going to experience X outcome, but the truth is we have no idea what our action is going to, how it's going to affect somebody. And for us to take on that responsibility as if it's our own fault that someone else feels something is ridiculous. I mean, it really is, because we have no control over their inner world. I mean, we don't know that. It's funny because, years ago, when we lived at the river house and we would have flooding, and I would talk to other people after we'd had a flood and tell them some of what had happened, and they would always be so sad for me. Oh, it sucks that you lost all this, or this happened, or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? But those were some beautiful days for me. They were beautiful days. I didn't have to go to work, because we were kind of trapped at the house because of the flooding, and it was sunny, and the birds were singing, and even though there's water flowing by us left and right, and it seems like a disaster, at the same time it was beautiful to me. And I think that we forget that other people have this inner world, and that they have feelings about this stuff, that just like what we do, and they could feel any number of things for any kind of event. And I was watching this silly show just recently, and there was this woman who, her husband had passed away, and she's a proprietor of this wine bar, and everybody knew that her husband had passed away. And so every single day people were coming in there and telling her how sad they feel for her, and this and that and the other. And all she wanted was people to stop saying that and just go back to normal, so that she could just feel normal again. And so, I mean, we don't know. We don't know what someone else is going through, and we don't know how what we think we're doing is going to actually affect them. I mean, it can affect them in a completely different way than what we expect. And I don't think Nora has come to that realization. She still thinks that her life and her actions are responsible for everybody else's happiness or unhappiness. And I think that she needs to overcome that and and realize that, you know, just because this boy Leo has gotten into trouble doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve this life that she is enjoying. And you know, and in her core life, it's not her fault that her brother's upset at her when she chose a different path for for participating in the band, or it's not her fault that, you know, that her dad was disappointed in her for not going to the Olympics, or, you know, all those different things. I mean, she, if she could just let go of that, then she could go on a path and enjoy the things that she does want to experience versus just feeling guilty all the time for not doing what she thinks everybody else is expecting of her. So, okay, that's it for now.
Kenneth shared in the chat, he says, I've learned that I must ignore thoughts that are not positive or productive. My inner world and balance are the most important. When I meditate, my focus is on my body. Connecting the body and mind is a continuous process for me. Nora knows she's about to die. Those weird feelings is the calling. Interesting thought.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kenneth. My inner world is really primary to me. It has to be, even at the expense of other people sometimes, which is really challenging in the position I'm in right now. And it's always funny how whatever we're talking about, you know, relates to us so personally, and some of the decisions that I'm having to make in my personal life right now. And I am thinking, what effect is that going to have on that? What effect is that going to have there? How do I mitigate what's going on, you know? And and then I see that reflected in my outer environment. Like in the past couple of days, there's been twice now actually that I've kind of gotten involved in a chat room where people were disagreeing, and it was so obvious that both sides felt so strongly about what they felt that like, neither one of them was going to budge at all, kind of thing, you know, and trying to get in there and sort of mitigate things a little bit, but knowing that no matter what I said in that situation, in the chat room, and no matter what decision I make in my personal decisions I'm trying to make right now, like I'm gonna be the bad guy either way. Like it doesn't matter. So and I think it's hilarious the way creation mirrors my inner world back to me from my outer world. At least I see it that way. I don't know, maybe I make connections where I shouldn't, but it's just hilarious. I think God is so funny. I really do. I don't know who or what God is, but they've got a sense of humor. I can tell you that. And a wicked sense of humor at that. It's not always like it's a little sarcastic at times. But I I I think Nora's about ready to slip into another life for sure. You know, she knows she's getting ready to go. I don't think she's going back to her root life yet. I think we have many more lifetimes to explore. But it is difficult to accept reality. You know, most of our angst comes from fighting reality because the should be's or should have's or what ifs or could have's or wish I had's or, you know, all that stuff. And you just can't live there. You just can't. I mean, you can. That's a choice, but you're miserable when you do that. And I think I still go back to Byron Katie's work. You know, I think it's fabulous, and that's exactly what it speaks to is lying to yourself about things and not accepting reality for what it is. So I highly encourage anybody that hasn't read Byron Katie's stuff to get to read her stuff. I don't think we ever read that. That was one of the books that we have talked a lot about, but haven't actually read. Maybe that needs to go on the list if it's not at some point. But it's so basic compared to some of the other books that we've covered. You know, we've covered some pretty deep books. This one being fiction is still being very deep in other ways, which I think is very interesting the way she writes. But you know, we're co-creating, guys. Like you can only take responsibility for so much, but you have to take responsibility, like Kenneth said, for your own inner being, because if you can't find peace there, you're not going to find peace when you look outwards either. When you find that peace, and I'm not saying I'm in the peace all the time, I'm not. Like I am a hellion at times. You guys know. But when you find that peace, even in the midst of chaos, just like when there's a story somewhere, I'm not a Bible teacher, you guys know, but like there's a story somewhere where there was a raging storm and like Jesus made it calm or something. I don't know. Dan, you know how it goes, but it's
Yeah,
like that. It's
very
like
much.
that when
He
you're in
was,
the raging storm. Go ahead.
yeah, he was actually asleep on the bow. There's a raging storm. The disciples that were in the boat were all scared and afraid, even though they're fishermen and been on the sea and the storms before. But this must have been so bad that they were shocked that he was just sleeping peacefully on the bow of the boat and woke him up. And that at that point, that's when he said, "Ye of little faith," and basically told him how, why are you afraid? I'm with you. God, Christ was with them, meaning like you go back to God's with us and a part of us. And even in the storms, we can find that peace. And,
Yes.
it's just hard to find it sometimes. But like you say, it takes work and I think going back into yourself and trusting, for me, trusting God that, okay, this is just a storm. It's nothing that uh, can't handle and work through. But you're right, in that. And I think we do have to do that. And a lot of times when we don't.
Yeah. Because when you find that peace, and if you visit it often enough, it's easier to get there, which is why practicing meditation is actually very important. A lot of people talk about meditation, but they don't practice it. And even if you can only stay there for, you know, a minute, 2 minutes, that's enough. Once you find that peace and you access it enough, you can go there instantly. And like 1 second of that peace is enough to calm the biggest storm in your life or the biggest pain that I'm going through. That doesn't mean I don't scream or whatever sometimes, but it's like I know that the now when you're in that peace, the now is okay, and that's all we have. And that's why it's so important to be there. Because otherwise, you're either anxious about the future or you're regretting the past. I'll shut up now.
No, don't shut up.
No, you share a lot of good stuff. I wanted to share what Kenneth had put in the chat again. He said, having CRPS, I've had to observe myself without judgment. The way I grow is through self-love and forgiveness, which we've all talked about, learned, and gone over before in some of the books we've done. And he said, the law is this: what you put out will come back to you. I spent 60 years looking at the negative and it landed me on my back. Today I'll focus on the positive because that too comes back. I
It's
think
funny how I think we know this, right? We know that, what we focus on is what we receive in our life. And it's the same thing as what is what you're thinking, that's what you're going to experience, right? And yet at the same time, we as humans have this I just want to strangle myself sometimes, because I keep going into this negative Nancy mumbo jumbo, and I'm like, I know. I mean, how many books have we read that talk about changing what we think, right? Because that shows us, that's what manifests in our life, whatever way we've talked about it. And yet, I have all these tools, I have all this knowledge, and I know that is how it works. I mean, I've experienced it, and yet I still exactly, what I'm saying, Catherine. I mean, I know you guys all know it's just ridiculous, and I'm like, my God, how much uh, how much work does it take to overcome this BS in our brain? Yeah, exactly. I just keep smacking myself. Good Lord. And I guess that, that for me, I guess the key has been over the years is that, we get together every week and we remind each other, hey, you're focused on the wrong shit. Stop that. Stop it. And yeah, because I'll tell you, these last few weeks, I mean, it's silly. I mean, we only took what, a 2 week break, was it? I don't know, something like that, with Thanksgiving and then I don't know, a week or so before that, and then I was sick last week. That's why I wanted to join you guys so bad, even though I'm still feeling crappy, as I knew that just being on here, it helps so much. And just like what Catherine was talking about, the meditation, I know that meditation can help me overcome some of the BS that gets spiraling around in my mind. Um, but it's not my automatic go-to, which doesn't make any sense. It should be, right? But I'll get wrapped up in all this mind mumbo jumbo, and I'll drag myself down and down and down. And it won't be until I'm just like feeling like this just utter chaos and depression that I'm like, hey, wait a second, stop that. Here, go put a meditation audio on, or just put some peaceful, yeah, do some breathing, connecting with the rest, like Kenneth is saying. And I mean, it's like we have the tools, we know the tools, and yet for whatever silly mumbo jumbo reason, we tend to I don't know, we I don't know what it is, why we do it, but I don't know, it's just so ingrained in our weird self. I don't know, I have no idea. I need like a sign on every, like the back of my glasses. Hello. Remember, it's not that difficult. Just refocus, quit spiraling into your mumbo jumbo, and do a little meditation, just sit quietly, whatever.
We need to forgive ourselves because we are inherently we are these tuning forks that take on energy of others and it surrounds us from many different sources. And so being able to clear that energy so that we can move forward and put out the energies that we want throughout the day, because it's like whatever you're going through the day, you know, you I keep coming back to the idea of being selfish or selfless, and the idea that you can be there's selfish selflessness and selfless selfishness, that you can be selfish for yourself, in the understanding that by being selfish, you can put yourself in a better position to help uh, others, even if it's just by being able to put out the right energies throughout your day, no matter what you're going through. Um, um, but that's an idea that my brain keeps coming back to.
I love that. Selfish, whatever you said there.
Selfishly selfless.
Right. What he said.
So, selfish,
Selfishly
self,
selfish.
Now he can't even say
yes,
it. It
yeah,
was good,
selfishly
though. It was good. We'll have to go
selfless,
back, pull that clip
selfishness.
out, Samantha.
What'd
Yeah.
you say? Pull that clip out. Oh, right. Gotcha. 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 I have to
Is-
come back and see if I can.
but that's a great way of looking at it. And if we remember that, even as we're going through our day, you know, even if we revert back to thinking, because a lot of times I'll think back to stuff we've talked about on here at different times during the week and stuff, and all of a sudden it lifts my mood. Because when I come on here, like I said in the chat, I always leave here in such a huge, positive, uplifted. One, I know it's because we all love each other and care about each other so much, even though we've never met. Think of what we would be like if we all met in person and got together. Oh my God, the people in the room around us would probably all light up and lighten up and, you know, because, I think, that we all genuinely love and care about each other no matter what, even though we've never met. And two, but carrying that idea of selfishly selfless, that's sometimes you don't pay attention to how you say it. That's hard to say. Um, you know, it can be a way of, trying to help, when you're in those down moments. Go back, like Jason said, it does sometimes come down to that. Am I going to be selfish or selfishly selfless? And I was going to say, I think there are times where you can be selfishly selfless and yet still be selfish by saying no here and there or something like that at times because it's not, because maybe in that moment in time, you're not in the right frame of mind or you're not in the right moment because of other things. And if you say no or something at this point in time, letting, them know that, hey, right now I'm just not there, let me circle back around and come back around and we can, because going back to what Catherine said, you gotta, kind of go back to that, yourself first before you can take it out too. You can't, if you're not there and if you're not in that right, then again, going back to what Jason said, people pick up that energy and they glob onto it. I hate to say it, I think we glob onto it and it just then affects us and then we become that and then we in turn, share it and pass it on rather than, you know, being mindful of ourselves and going, okay, wait a minute, what am I feeling, and it's hard to do sometimes in those minute to minute day and this and that or what we're going through. But I find myself a lot of times as I'm out Ubering, I have to reset my brain because I'll get somebody that just irritates the crap out of me that I picked up. And then I'm in that mode. And then as I'm, I have to change the music or something back to something that is more and try and get myself because it's easy as I'm going out and I know Catherine knows what I'm talking about. It's so easy to get so caught up in that moment and have that moment carry on for the next 2 or 3 hours rather than being done over in the next few minutes. So, it's a lot and it all does. We have to be mindful for ourselves. Nobody else is going to do it.
Kenneth touched on it in the chat about connecting with the breath. Just have to take a deep breath and refocus yourself because that's all you can change is yourself. Knowing that whatever you change affects everyone else around you as well. Sorry, I put you to sleep, Dad. Oh,
You guys forget that when I jump on here, it's 7 a.m. in the morning here. So I get up at 6 just to get myself. And I love it on Saturday mornings, but sometimes it's like, okay, you know, a couple more hours of sleep would have been nice, but you know, I live through it and I love it. I don't miss it when I, don't have to miss, being on here because it's so important to me and means so much to me to be on here with all of you guys. And it helps make my day and, you know, kind of caps off my week too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the thing about the breath and, being able to focus on that. I mean, what's great about that I find is that, your breath is something that can steady you, that's always there. It's something that's always there for you to focus on and help you to recalibrate. But you can learn to focus on other things as well, and bring just different energies and different thoughts into the things that in the past have caused you anxiety. And so, like one of the things you had mentioned earlier on, Dan, it's like, well, how do we actually get past these things and move forward and put things to work and to good use? And I'd heard something the other day. It was very, pretty succinct about and it touches on a lot of things that we have read in the past, and goes along with what you were saying too, Lori, in that, and also what you were saying, Samantha, about focusing, that we tend to either worry about the past or think about the anxiety of our future. Well, part of what this person was saying was that, you want to change the direction of your life, or put yourself on a different path. You just have to make that decision and focus on and put forth the vision that you want in your life, and then um, focus on that vision of what you want to happen. Put yourself in it with positive thoughts about how great it's going to be and all the things are going to work out for you in that, rather than focusing on the possibilities of things going wrong. You're really controlling that vision and that focus. And by staying with that and stepping into that, you're putting yourself there. And the longer that you do that, the more you're going to act towards that. And eventually it's going to start pulling you towards it as well. But that, like the breath, is something to focus on. It's something that you're switching out your focus. Instead of focus on the negative, you're giving yourself something to focus on. The breath is always there, calming, get you away from the negative energies, get you to back into focus of yourself. But then what do we do at that point? It's like, okay, well, you've got to now put something new in your mind, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do with that space.
That is the biggest issue I have. What do I want? And what my soul, my heart wants is affected by so much else, physical things that are out of my control. Kind of like our breath is an automatic thing. Your body's going to breathe as long as it's capable, not having something else hindering it. And it's not to be taken for granted either.
Yeah, you still have to be able to have something to focus on, to build, that picture in your mind that you can believe in, that you feel you're worthy of, that you, whatever it might be, that that could possibly pull you away from the ideas or the desire that you want. And sometimes we have to kind of maybe change the desire slightly to something that is, at least for me, it's just an idea that you change it slightly to something that, well, I don't have wings. I'm not a bird. I can't fly myself, but perhaps I can indirectly get to a point where I can either um, be able to fly in planes more, or experience that feeling more, or somehow come to that point in a different way. And you still have to, your mind might still come back and say, well, but this will probably happen, or I don't, probably I don't deserve that, or whatever it is. But those are the things you have to just, those negative things, you just put out of your mind completely, and you only focus on the positive aspects of it and how it will happen for you, and all the great things that will happen once you're there. That's it. And hey, I feel like even if it doesn't happen overnight, or maybe even if it were to never happen at all, it'd be a much better space to be in, to be enjoying that journey and that vision and all, and thinking and focusing on all that positive stuff, than to be entertaining those negative energies. Hey,
I don't know if this will help anybody, but it helped me a little bit. So we think of ourselves as our named self, like I'm Catherine, but really I'm not Catherine. Like this body is Catherine. It was named Catherine. And this gentle animal that I live within, is Catherine. But I, as a soul, have a different name. And you can ask what that name is, or you can assign that name. But once you separate the two, I think it makes it easier to step out of one and into the other, without completely disassociating. But, it's just another way of being the witness, of being the observer, but with more identity. Because when I am in a situation where I know that Catherine is getting out of control, I can always call in Psalm, which is the name that came to me for my soul, Psalm. And I can always step into her, and I have access to the wisdom that I know is there, and that calm, peaceful, non-judgmental, non-emotional self that is there, and I can act from that place, as opposed to Catherine's over here ready to whoop somebody's ass. I can bring in the psalm to kind of calm the waters down a little bit.
Are you saying SONG song or psalm?
Actually, it's SAAHM, psalm.
Psalm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's Kenneth was saying, that's an idea. I think he was referring to that he hasn't thought of, and I've often thought of it, maybe not in that exact same way, but even in introducing myself, you know, and saying I'm Jason, but it's not. That's my name. My name my name is Jason. It's funny how just that little difference can be a big thing, or making that distinction that, hey, I'm bigger and better than the name that was given to you.
That's why it's good the Native Americans gave them names as to how they are, like you would write in a um, allegory. So my name is what I represent, or what my soul actually, the essence of it is. Like my name might be Serenity or Psalm, because it applies to how you are, your personality, which is a whole other thing that we all have, that we were born into and can't change.
Kenneth added that he's added several things, but he first added that our actions are the outward manifestation of our inner world. And then he says, when I focus on my actions, I can learn how I feel by the things I do or don't do. And then he also, and then Catherine just shared that her native name is Talking Eyes. And that I do believe about you. Knowing you all these years, I believe that, um, but I think all mothers have those eyes to a degree. They can say something without even saying a word. My mom could do that to me. She'd just look at me in certain ways, and I'd be like, "Oop, I'm dead. Okay, just quit before I'm ahead." You know, on that. But I think you're right. I think we all do have that sense of our soul that is a bigger embodiment, and sometimes we don't know the full scope of the nature of our soul. And I think most of the world doesn't, you know, and I think that's something never thought about that, because my soul is eternal. My soul will always be there. My soul is me in its purest form. I've never looked at it that way. Hmm. I always take something away from these chats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the hour goes by so fast. Love you guys. It's another great chat.
I tell you, wherever when we do come together, wherever it might be, we're probably going to close the place down. It will probably be closing time, and
They'll be like, get
sorry,
out of
folks.
here, you guys.
No, we're gonna have to get together at like a 24-hour place. It won't matter.
I think we need to rent a bed and breakfast, and that way we can just,
There we
you
go.
know,
Yeah.
eat as much as we want.
Well,
Talk, I get the
just
feeling
happy.
I think if we were to gather, we'd just be talking all day and all night and just on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
That Catherine and I have the exception that we have met. And absolutely, you might have talking eyes, but I have talking eyebrows.
You guys are funny. You've all given me something to think about this week for sure, and have uplifted me for the week. And I know you're all uplifted too, so glad of that. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap up for today, unless anybody has a final thought. Nope. All right. Okay, guys.
I was going to jump out.
Jump out.
I was just going to say, I think Nora is still in for even bigger things to learn on top of what she's just now starting to realize, because it took her, I think, all these lives to get to this life where it seemingly is a life that she likes and wants to hang on to, but it's not the pinnacle and the final. So I think we still have a lot to learn, and I'm sure we probably will. This book has been really, really interesting, and like Catherine said, it's been deep.
Especially for a fiction book. And I think we all have a book within us. And just what's the point of getting it out there that somehow it's going to affect someone's life somewhere?
And Jason's is going to be called Selflessly Selfish.
And
Or
I'm going to leave you
selfishly
all with
selfless.
a rainbow and the beach there.
Oh, see, I thought it was going to be string theory.
Oh my goodness. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap up for today. Everybody have an awesome, amazing week. And for those of you who are watching, if you want to give us a like on YouTube, you can do that. You can find us on Facebook, find our Facebook group by looking for Mindset Mastery Collective. And the pinned post has links to get into our Zoom meeting, which we get together just about every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And so we'd love to have you if you want to join us. With that, I'm going to just wish you all an awesome and amazing week. And we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.